Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the DVC Show. Coming up, it is the Sucks Doesn't Suck DVC 2020 edition. Hey everyone, welcome. Coming to you from the Bob Varley studio on a very special day, our marathon show for Give Kids the World. I'm your host, Pete Werner, joined this week by my good friends from the DVC Store, Mr. Jerry Saito.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Are you saying that you don't suck?
I say I don't suck.
Okay. I agree. Jerry.
There could be some debate out there.
Jerry, don't cut away from me. Jerry does not suck. Joining us via Skype, our good friend, Mr. Paul Krieger.
Hey, everybody.
And Paul also
doesn't suck.
I went Martha Stewart earlier, and I made my own.
Oh, that's nice.
Wow.
That's nice.
Wow, look at you.
Very good.
Look at you. And, of course, back in the Nook, our producer for these shows, Mr. Corey Fiascanaro.
Welcome home. And last time I held up the other one, but it doesn't suck anymore.
Well, my vote's the only one that counts.
Oh,
I'm kidding. Welcome, folks. Hope you're enjoying our content so far. Of course, if you're watching this on any other day other than Labor Day 2020, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But this show is being recorded especially for our marathon show, which is to raise money for Give Kids the World. You want to learn more about Give Kids the World, gktw.org. And we are also running, Give Kids the World is running an auction this week, has been running an auction for the past week, culminating at the end of our marathon show today at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So again, if you're watching this any other time, none of this matters to you. But many of you are watching this as we're doing the marathon. So, before we get started, just the usual plugs. If you are interested in selling or purchasing a DVC resale contract, go ahead and reach out to our friends over at dvcstore.com or give them a call, 1-800-550-6493.
Yes.
God, it's only been like a year and a half. And 1-800-550-6493, and they can help you, especially if you're looking to sell your contracts. They always need sellers, and maybe you want to sell what you have and upgrade to something else, and maybe you have a 2042 expiration and you want something that's going to last a little longer. Whatever it is you need, they're your first phone call, 1-800-550-6493. And also be sure to check out our awesome DVC fan community on Facebook. Links to all that in the show notes right below this. And while you're here, do me a favor. While you're watching, hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. That helps us out a lot with YouTube when you do that, especially the like button. But I want you to do both, okay? And then I want you to go to the auction, and I want you to buy a lot of stuff for Give Kids the World. Because I said so.
There you go.
All right?
There's a lot of cool DVC stuff on there for this auction too.
Insane.
I've been looking at over the past couple of days. I mean, it's a lot of neat exclusive items that you wouldn't find elsewhere. So.
They did an incredible job. This year, Give Kids the World is conducting the auction for us. We're not doing it. And thank God, because I was joking around with Fiasco. We're going to call it Give Kids a Job. Because I'll tell you the hardest part of doing these marathon shows is absolutely the auction. It is absolutely the auction. So that those guys and their volunteers have been spending a month and a half, almost 2 months now, getting this auction together. And these are all items that people have sent in over the years that they have, waiting for an opportunity to auction it off. I believe we have over 500 items in the auction, and Paul's right. There is some tremendous DVC stuff you can't find anymore. During the live broadcast, probably right after this, I'll be showcasing some of those items. But I was looking through them too, Paul, and I don't know if you have a list like I do. I don't have it in front of me, but there's a list of things like, oh, that looks good.
Yeah, one of the neat ones I was eyeing up, there's a lanyard, a cast member lanyard from the grand opening of Bay Lake Tower. Again, like that.
Oh, you're gonna be in my competition on that?
There's been a lot of chatter. I posted that item as like a preview in the group, and there's people arguing over who's going to outbid who. So
Yeah. Well, okay.
I think
okay.
that will go.
Let me just send a message. You're up against Big Daddy now. Okay. You're up against Big Daddy, and when I say Big Daddy, I mean, come on, go take a look at a show from a year ago, and now to take a look at this. It's like somebody shoved a bicycle pump up my ass and kept going. So I've actually been approached by Macy's to be afloat in the parade this year. So I'm having fun. All right, so we haven't done a Sucks Doesn't Suck in a while. I mean, I think we can all agree if we're just rating 2020, it's a round of sucks. And every time we do one of these, somebody gets a hair up their ass about, oh, you're saying suck. Well, I just said ass, so. So we thought we'd, kind of focus it in on DVC and DVC in 2020 in particular. So this conversation might be different in another year, but the way it works is I will throw out a topic, and then everyone will vote and comment on whether they think this sucks or doesn't suck. So let's start easy. Let's start with DVC's initial response to COVID-19. Okay. Like I said, this was an easy one. Jerry, we'll start with you. Why does DVC's initial response to COVID-19 suck?
Because there wasn't a response is really why I think it sucked. I mean, once they actually made an announcement that they're going to do something for the members, there was a little bit of light at the end of that tunnel. But the initial no response, and people didn't know what was going on or what Disney or how they were going to react to COVID, was challenging and difficult because there were so many points that were disappearing, that were expiring. People didn't know if they could actually get those points back or use them. So then when Disney finally made the announcement, it was nice that they were making an effort, but I think they were trying to learn as they went. They didn't know what to do, so they were trying to adjust, and
And I will absolutely give them that. I mean, no one knew what to do with this. And look, you're not going to have a B plan for a global pandemic when one hasn't happened in 100 years, okay? So I'm not blaming them for not having that plan. Nobody did. I didn't. Disney didn't. Nobody did. I don't care who it was.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop short there.
But I'm not. But adding to that, I don't think that their initial response was all that great in terms of what they offered.
As you mentioned, their initial response was non-existent, and that is my problem. That what would have been appropriate was a mass communication to the membership of saying, hey, obviously done a little more artfully than this, we don't know what we're doing right now. We're trying to figure this out. Please bear with us. But instead, it was complete and utter radio silence for well over a month. In the meantime, we're also while we're in the age of COVID, we're also in the age of the internet. Every DVC member everywhere was turning into a torch-wielding villager. And they did themselves an enormous amount of damage, PR-wise, with the membership that is going to take them years to recover from a PR perspective. And you know what? We see a lot of people selling their memberships. Now, that's great news for people who want to buy, because there's a lot of new inventory flooding the market at the moment because of this. But one of the reasons is people lost some faith. Now, I have not lost faith in DVC at all. I have not lost faith in their leadership or their management or the product especially. But this was a huge problem. Paul, you also agreed that their response to COVID kind of sucked. So tell us why.
Yeah. Jumping off of where Jerry left off, we were left scrambling when they did finally come up with a decision on what they were going to do in making sense of it. You had an email that came out from Terry Schultz that said one thing. You had a member services representative on chat or on the phone saying another. Then you go online, you try to do X, Y, or Z, and it's telling you something completely different. So there was just no consistency around the message, even once it came out, and I, like Pete and Jerry said, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt a little bit on that. But when you do have a message in place, you need to make sure you're consistent and you're clear, because that's what your members are looking for. And there were just so many questions on the boards, on the DVC fan Facebook group, and everywhere going, what do I do? What about my vacation? And we we made a question and answers, but even that, we were updating every 3 seconds. So it was just so difficult to actually come up with giving good advice to people on what they should do with their vacations and their points at that point.
And this is where any leeway for being in a global pandemic and not having a B plan, where that excuse falls apart. Because this is, what you're talking about wasn't about that. This was about organization and coordination of the message. That is Terry Schultz's job, and she failed at it, and she failed miserably, because the right hand did not know what the left one was doing. So, problem with the initial response, strike one. That insanity of every 3 days we were getting different, literally contradicting messages every 3 days. Now, I'll put that in context. Obviously, on the Dreams Unlimited travel side, we deal with Walt Disney Travel. Now, things were changing on Walt Disney's travel side every 3 days. We were kept informed at every single step. When they didn't have an immediate answer, they told us they didn't. When they did change a policy, they told us immediately, if not sooner. We were kept in the loop. So it's not like all of Disney fell apart, just DVC. And the messaging was all over the place. And personally, I felt heads should have rolled after that.
Well, not to mention, if there was, once the initial response came out, Disney Member Services was almost non-existent. You would get a busy signal for weeks on end, or you couldn't get in touch with anybody to get clarification or an answer on anything. So, again, that was a fail as well. They had to expect that people were going to call and ask questions, and they weren't even prepared for that.
No.
Right. Fiasco?
Yeah, on top of what you guys already mentioned, I just saw so many horror stories of people's I know some comments would be, oh, it's just a vacation with everything else going on, you can't be too upset, but some people's was really ripped apart by this. Imagine being a family who borrowed points from next year and then saved your points from last year and then used your points from this year to go on a trip in 2020. Your day was definitely ruined, and I saw multiple horror stories like that.
Oh yeah, it was heartbreaking. What I was seeing online, the stories we were hearing, was absolutely heartbreaking. And, like I said, part of that now is you see a flood of contracts coming onto the market. And I think, if we wonder why people are starting to sell, that's one of the reasons. These things are absolutely one of the reasons. Now, obviously, as time has gone on, I will say it's gotten better. They have a consistent message. They figured out what they're doing. They're implementing it, generally speaking, in a pretty consistent way. We're not seeing contradictions here and there. But where Walt Disney Travel Company had that under control in a week, it took DVC 3 months. And I understand they were dealing, in fairness, they're not apples to apples comparisons necessarily, because where, Walt Disney Travel Company is dealing with, short-term vacation rentals, this is, DVC is dealing with a real estate transaction. And a whole host of laws come into play about what you can and cannot do. So it's not the same. Your reservation with DVC and your ownership in DVC is not the same as a reservation with Walt Disney Travel Company. So I want to be fair about that. And part of that process was about DVC navigating the legal minefield. And let me tell you something. Somebody who just got his real estate license in Florida, I tell you something. The laws are they're strict and they're crazy, and they are all designed to protect the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay? The level of protections in this state that have been put into place, just because, especially where timeshares are concerned, because you had so many charlatans, you had so many crooks doing crappy things with timeshares, and some of them still do. But, Disney obviously was never in that, and still isn't, in that category. They're not sleazy. They don't have sleazy salespeople. They don't have sleazy policies. And, part of that is making sure they adhere to the letter of the law. So I know that's what the delay was about. The problem is, as simply as I just communicated that to you, Terry Schultz could have communicated that to the membership and explained, we're aware of what's going on. We're aware of your concerns. But there are legalities here because this is a real estate transaction that we need to sort out first, because this is completely uncharted territory. You know what? I'm not going to say that was going to make everybody happy, but it would have calmed everybody down. It would have calmed everybody down. We're not unreasonable people. We're not idiots. People would have understood that. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And that's something they're going to have to, that's something that's going to be around their neck for a while. All right. Enough of that. Enough of that. Let's go in a little different direction. Riviera Resort. Sucks, doesn't suck. We have, again, a unanimous verdict. Paul, why does Riviera not suck? And I assume you guys are factoring in the restrictions, the resale restrictions, when you hold up your paddle.
I'm talking. When I hold up my paddle, I think just the resort, the resort as a whole, because the resale restrictions suck. But the resort, I like the resort.
But factoring that in, do you still? Okay, so maybe we have to revote. Factoring in the resale restrictions, I did vote this way, considering that. But I now see two members of the team are uncertain. No, you can't do that. You can't do that. You have to choose one.
All right, I'm gonna stay.
Okay, so we remain. All right, I just wanted to make sure that was factored in here. So, Paul, why does Riviera not suck?
It is still, at the end of the day, a beautiful resort and has amazing features. Again, we've talked about this on a recent show. Topolino's is hitting it out of the park. It is a beautiful new restaurant. The rooms are beautiful. And I think if you look at it from the standpoint, some of us do get caught up in the fact that we look at DVC, and it's not that we look at it as an investment, but we also have to be logical. It's like your house. It's something that you don't want it to depreciate over time or something like that. But most new buyers need to look at DVC and think with a fairly confident mindset that this is going to be our family's vacation for the next 30 years, and hopefully nothing's going to happen to affect that. So when you factor in the resale restrictions, if I was a new buyer and I was looking at the incentives that they were throwing out there right now, which are amazing for Riviera, and I wanted my family to vacation for the next 50 years, I would have no problem buying. It's a beautiful resort.
All right. Fiasco.
Yeah, I mean, so, we do the pros and cons episodes on the DVC show all the time. Obviously, there are pros and cons to Riviera. Resale restrictions are one of the cons. The size of the actual resort outside, I think, is definitely a con too. But aside from that, I think the pros definitely outweigh the cons for me for Riviera. I absolutely love the resort. Like Paul mentioned, the dining there is amazing. Topolino's is one of my favorite restaurants on property right now. I really hope they keep up the consistency because it's just fantastic. Some people might point out that the view to Caribbean Beach might be a con. For me, that doesn't bother me at all. I honestly like the fact that I can walk to another one of my favorite restaurants just across the way, Sebastian, so easily. And just the theming for Riviera as well is just really cool. The art around all the hallways and rooms is some some of my favorite art and on any of the properties. So it's just a slam dunk winner for me. However, I will have to go on the record and say I wouldn't buy a contract at Riviera over another property, just because of those restrictions.
And I just want to, I have this app that, will send me, every day sends me some kind of inspirational message. Just came up. My body was built to be loved. Okay, nice. Sorry. Just want to throw that in. All right, Jerry, why does Riviera not suck?
So I like the Riviera. Again, my mother, she's from France, so the idea of like having a resort in the Disney portfolio that's kind of like my mom's heritage is it's really cool to me. I like Topolino's as an option for one of the best dining on property. The pools are great. The kids' areas are great. I like the proximity to Hollywood Studios, and the gondola to me hasn't been an issue, but that's up for debate. I very much dislike the resale restriction. I don't think that that's a great option, and I don't think I would buy Riviera because of the resale restriction. But if you take that out of context, like most timeshare companies don't have a huge amount of resorts in their portfolio. So there's one resort. So buying into Riviera, if you buy it resale, you only get Riviera and you get RCI. And that RCI is an outside exchange network. So if you know that going in, like you could buy direct and you could pay a lot more, or you could buy resale and going in you're going to get a quality resort that you're going to have 10, 15, 20, 50 years of memories at. I think you're going to save money if you buy it resale. You're going to enjoy the resort, and you're still on Disney property to have some great vacations. So I hate the resale restriction, but I think the resort is nice. I don't like the maintenance fees, and I don't like the cost to stay there. If you look at the point charts, it's very expensive. But as a resort, I do like it. So it was a tough suck, doesn't suck. I went with doesn't suck, but catch me on another day. I might change my mind.
It may be like a 51-49.
Yeah, exactly. Catch me on another day.
Right. And I also said doesn't suck, considering the resale restrictions. And as Jerry said, because of those restrictions, I won't buy there. But which I think a lot of people are not buying there. And I think before COVID, they were having a hard time selling Riviera. And I think now it's even worse. But if I'm going to just look at the resort itself, the theming, the amenities, Topolino's, it's really hard. It's really hard to say that resort sucks. It's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. The rooms are beautiful. The cast members were amazing. So it does have a lot. Does have a lot going for it. I think it's an excellent addition to DVC. I think it is marred by its resale restrictions. I think it would be selling a lot better if those restrictions didn't exist. And my hope is that because of COVID in particular, that DVC backtracks on those restrictions.
I think if they took those restrictions out, they would kill it. Like I think people would just jump in head first. They would want it because, again, that restriction I think is limiting the desire because they're scared. Okay, can I ever get out of it?
And the thing is that the restriction was added out of arrogance. We're going to start crushing the resale market. Let me just say this. No, you're not. Okay? You're not. The resale market's going to exist regardless of what you do, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's a real estate transaction. You can't do anything about it. You can't tell people they can't resell it. And all you're managing to do is piss off your membership. And right now, I think if you want to take some of that albatross off your neck that you put there when you screwed up your response to COVID, you want to have that wiped away? Pull these restrictions. Pull the restrictions. We should make that a hashtag.
Yeah.
But actually, you know what I'm thinking, Paul? Because we're recording this a week before the marathon show. Paul, let's go ahead and put up on DVC Fan, the Facebook group. Let's put these to a vote. Each of these topics, sucks, doesn't suck, for each of these things that we're covering. And then right after this runs, when we're live, we'll come in and we'll discuss your thoughts on what sucks, doesn't suck. I think that would be fun.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
So, okay. So next up, point borrowing restrictions due to COVID. Ooh, we have a split. See, I like to do that with these. I start with some obvious ones that I know are going to be kind of unanimous, and then we kind of move into the more divisive ones. Let me start and just say why I voted doesn't suck. And this is just about realism.
Yeah.
They had no choice. They had no choice. I will defend this decision on their part. It sucks, and I don't like it, and I'm being affected by it. I'll be honest with you. I'm being affected by it. There were some things I wanted to try and do this year, but I'm running into that. That issue. But it was the only. What else could they have done to try and make some of these members? We were talking before about how awful it was, how screwed some members got with what happened, and it's not it's not a situation where they can just magically say, okay, we're going to make everybody whole and figure it out later.
Yeah.
They have to have balance with these things. They're only allowed to do so much. I don't know what else they could have done. Now, maybe people smarter than me on this topic, in particular Paul and Jerry, might have two people who voted sucked, might have a different perspective on it. But Jerry, let me ask you, why did you vote sucked?
It's completely for selfish reasons, because I booked a 3-bedroom beach cottage for my birthday, and I did it, I guess, in that transition where they put that borrowing restriction on, and planning trips, like having friends come down from out of town, having the 3-bedroom, and then all of a sudden I go to look at the reservation a month later and it's not there. So I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. So I called Disney and they said, yeah, it's part of that borrowing restriction. So for total selfish reasons is why I think it sucks. I do completely understand why Disney did it. I think it is necessary. And even side note, just from a business perspective, like as a member perspective, if you have points that were borrowed and they're currently borrowed, and normally Disney tells you borrowing is a final transaction, you may be able to call Disney right now and have them unborrow those points. So if you're in that situation where you have points that have been borrowed, they're putting points back. So just side note, if you do have that situation, but yeah, it's totally personal that I said it sucked because I wanted to go and stay in that beach cottage.
Okay, all right, it's all about you, Jerry.
Yeah, it was.
Paul.
Pete, overall, I agree with you in terms of there was nothing else they could have done to really rectify this situation. But there's 3 things that come to mind in terms of the fact that it sucks. The first is what Jerry has mentioned. I've heard so many stories online of people being affected, their trips that they've planned for 2 or 3 years, banking and borrowing and all of that kind of stuff being affected. So those people, my heart goes out to because granted, no one saw this pandemic situation coming, but it just really impacts what was maybe a 2 or 3 year planned trip for those individuals. The second is the sales message. Borrowing has always been a large part of the sales message for DVC. They plaster it all over the place. Bank and borrow points. That way you don't need as many if you're only traveling every 2 or 3 years. All of that stuff is built into the sales message. So now we're off message. And yes, always in the fine print, there's always been that language saying that they could take it away if they wanted to. But it really does sting a little bit, this being the first time, at least that I'm aware, that this has actually occurred. And last is what we just finished talking about with our first topic, the message. Give us an update. Provide us with some information of what you're seeing related to the DVC point system. Are you seeing stress on the system? Is it not as bad as you thought? Are you guys thinking about maybe in a couple months or something like that reducing the restriction on borrowing, or is it going the other way and people should maybe prepare for us only being able to borrow 25% of our points in the near future as we come up towards the 50th. So just be honest with the members, be a little bit more transparent about those things.
Well, and your point's well taken about how they sell it and what they push as perks of selling it. But again, I'll go back to, I'm not going to hit anybody on not having foreseen COVID coming, a global pandemic hitting us. It's just, it was the stuff of movies for us. It was the stuff of movies. It was just, intellectually we could all say, yeah, it could absolutely happen that we have some global pandemic or something, but it's not how we were living our lives. So I give them a pass on that. And again, I really am trying to be fair when I'm saying, when I'm criticizing them. I do really try and be fair. I think I am well within my lane to criticize them harshly on that initial response. But I think things have gotten better, and that'll be our segue into our next topic. Looking at 2020, availability of resorts. And again, we have unanimous vote. Okay, now this is a horrible situation. Horrible situation. A bright spot in it, though, I've been able to book, and I'm booking for friends that are coming into town. I've been able to book
anything,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Anything. And I think it's starting to get a little tighter because DVC members who are used to seeing October through December unavailable unless you're booking well in advance are like, ooh,
Yeah.
look, there's no crowd. Yeah, okay, I got to wear a mask. I'm in. But availability has been great. Fiasco?
Yeah, right now I have a reservation coming up in October. It is for Saratoga, but I just had family down here, a month ago, and they were originally staying at Pop, and they got upgraded to Old Key West. I've since been to all the resorts pretty much, except maybe two, since they reopened, and it's been a dream. Granted, 2020's been a sucks year, but as far as how the resorts feel, they feel really good, and being able to stay pretty much anywhere is something that you can't always get.
Paul?
Amy pretty much updates me on a weekly basis of all the different DVC resorts that we could be staying at right now. And, leading up to our big split stay trip that we recently returned from, we were modifying those reservations until a week before. It's just things kept opening, and it was like, how do we not stay there? And still to this day, even after coming home from that trip, it's like, oh, we could have stayed there too, and we could have done this. So, availability is amazing, and still, if you're flexible, there's still some amazing opportunities out there.
All right, Jerry?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I check availability every day, not only for my personal use, but also for the office. And I'll tell you, rooms are available. It is getting tighter for December and after, but I've been able to finally stay at Copper Creek, went to Geyser Point, had that bison burger on Friday. That was amazing. Got a reservation at Poly. Just things are wide open. So it's been great for that. I like that.
And, I'll tell you something. The pressure on, I think you're going to see Poly dry up very quickly because announcement, as we're recording this just this morning, that they are not going to be reopening the hotel side of the Polynesian until next summer. So the only way you can possibly stay at Polynesian is to rent DVC points, which, of course, our friends at DVC Store are more than happy to help you with.
Or book in there as a DVC member. You can rent.
Right, book in as a DVC member, obviously. But for those who may be watching that aren't members yet, that may want to stay at the Poly. I think Poly is going to become impossible to touch moving forward. But yeah, I mean, that's been one small bright spot in an otherwise dismal crap show cluster fudge of a year. Like how I did that? Yeah. You like how I did that?
I was about to have to edit.
Yeah. No. I'm a professional. I'm a professional usually. All right. What about you guys? You have anything you want to throw out?
Yeah. So the initial reopening of the resorts.
Oh, that's an easy one. Having been there on the opening day of Bay Lake Tower, brilliant,
Yeah.
flawless. Mm-hmm. And what was really special, now I'll just say that was the third week in June.
First day
July.
they opened. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
22nd
yeah.
of June.
Third week in June,
Yeah.
like I said.
You got it.
That's the last time I've been on property. Now I am planning this week to go to Epcot for the first time, but it's the only time I've been on property since the shutdown. And of course, all those cast members, they were just coming back to work. You could see the gratitude, how happy they were that they were coming back to work. You saw how much they loved it. It reminded me of why I love Disney. It reminded me of why I love DVC. It was weird.
Yeah.
Let's not, it was weird because it was like we pretty much had Bay Lake Tower to ourselves. But they did, I thought, they handled flawlessly. Mm-hmm. Absolutely flawlessly.
And after that day, we were at Bay Lake Tower. I spent the rest of that week going to a lot of the other resorts too, and every single one was just seamless. Of course, there was very reduced crowds. Like, you literally felt like you were the only person there. If you look on our channel, the DIS, you'll see a lot of the walkthroughs I did during that. You can kind of get a vibe of how it was. But like, you'll see me walking around the boardwalk, and I run into like 7 other people in like a 30-minute time span. It was really tame like that, and all the cast members were, like Pete mentioned, so happy to be there. I walked in the Boardwalk Bakery to get like a coffee and a pastry, and they were like, "Oh, it's on the house. Welcome home." It's just
Okay, that didn't happen.
it really did. It really did. And like, it was just it was eerie. It was weird. Like, I walked onto the hotel side of the boardwalk, and they still hadn't done the landscaping for that side yet. So like, all the bushes for the outdoor, those like
The Rose Garden.
the rose garden rooms, they were still like all overflowing with grass and stuff like that. So that was kind of weird. It was like an eerie. It's like an unlandscaped Disney is something you never ever see. It almost looked like abandoned boardwalk.
I'm surprised they opened it
Yeah.
like that.
Right.
I really am.
Yeah.
But Paul?
Overall, it's really allowed members to slow down and explore the resorts and enjoy them. And that's what Amy and I really have done on our recent trip. And, even with the parks now getting a little bit past the reopening, even with the parks open now, they're closing early enough where people are beginning to appreciate the amenities at the resorts a little bit more and fall in love with their DVC resort itself. I think that Disney did a tremendous job on the reopening, and if I could still be there, I would be.
Jerry?
Yeah, completely agree. So even they've been open several months now. I went to Copper Creek Friday night, and it was spectacular. I mean, again, all the cast members super nice. I didn't feel like the place was crowded at all. It's been a great reopening, and I stayed at Poly recently before this Copper Creek stay, and I very comfortable on property and very happy the way Disney has reopened and the way the cast members are. It's just great.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. I want to make sure we leave time in this block for our Sucks Doesn't Suck polls that Paul's putting up on the DVC Fan Facebook group. So we're going to cut this here. And we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you again next time with another edition of the DVC Show. Have a great week, folks.